and what the Foreign Secretary spoke in that briefing. The joint statement, according to the Foreign Secretary, explicitly mentions the phrase cross-border terrorism in the context of both countries, that is India and the US, calling on Pakistan to ensure that its territory is not used for launching terror attacks on other countries, and that Pakistan must bring the perpetrators of the 26/11/2008 Mumbai attacks and other cross-border attacks perpetrated by Pakistan-based terror groups to justice. So clearly, the joint statement using very strong formulation in terms of terrorism, especially that originating from Pakistan and directed at India. The Foreign Secretary also went on to say that the joint statement and discussions focused on other issues, namely trade and investments, defense cooperation, energy security. And in that context, he said that the expectation was that the American nuclear company Westinghouse can rework its situation and be back in business after it was declared bankrupt not so long ago. He also went on to say that the issue of connectivity figured in the discussions, especially in the joint statement, with both countries agreeing that connectivity projects should respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the countries in question. And the insinuation or the reference here was clearly to China's Belt and Road Initiative, which also comprises the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC project, which runs through the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. So clearly, all the major issues were covered in the discussions, including on the issue of terrorism, where both sides agreed to expand the intelligence sharing and the counter-terrorism cooperation at the operational level. Other than that, other issues such as Indian Ocean security, West Asia, Afghanistan also figured prominently in the discussion between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. Remember, this is their first meeting after coming to power after the US presidential election. Although they had spoken on 3 occasions in recent months, this was their first meeting. And we saw pictures earlier of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump embracing each other in a warm embrace, a hug, which is described as a bear hug by many commentators. Not once, not twice, but on 3 occasions during and after their meeting. So clearly, a very productive discussion, in the words of Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar, who was addressing the media there towards the end of Prime Minister Modi's 2-day visit to the US. And we are given to understand that Prime Minister Modi is on his way to the airport and ready for departing to the Netherlands on his way back home to India. All right, so you're watching the continuous coverage here on WION of Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US. The highly anticipated meeting between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi took place in the White House, as President Trump, alongside the First Lady Melania Trump, welcomed Prime Minister at the White House. And these are the pictures that you see on your screens right now. And a 20-minute meeting of President Trump and Prime Minister Modi lasted more than 40 minutes, according to Foreign Secretary Jaishankar. It was followed by a delegation-level talks. These are the pictures from those talks, which the 2 leaders addressed the media later in a joint press statement. Now, while President Trump called for greater efforts by India to relax trade barriers and sought a greater trade balance between the 2 nations, the 2 leaders concurred on various other mutually concerning issues, including the continuing his tirade against terrorism. President Trump called for the need to end Islamic radical terrorism.
The security partnership between the United States and India. Evils of terrorism, and we are both determined to destroy terrorist organizations and the radical ideology that drives them. We will destroy radical Islamic counter-terrorism.
Also recognizing India as a budding economy, President Trump lauded the Indian government's efforts to keep India on the path of growth.
I have always had a deep admiration for your country and for its people, and a profound appreciation for your rich culture, heritage, and traditions. This summer, India will celebrate the 70th anniversary of its independence, and on behalf of the United States, I want to congratulate the Indian people on this magnificent milestone in the life of your very, very incredible nation. During my campaign, I pledged that if elected, India would have a true friend in the White House. And that is now exactly what you have, a true friend.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who met the President for the first time, echoed the American administration's concern to fight terrorism.
आज अपनी मीटिंग में हमने टेररिज्म, एक्सट्रीमिज्म और रेडिकलाइजेशन से पूरे विश्व में उत्पन्न गंभीर चुनौतियों पर चर्चा की तथा इसमें अपने सहयोग को बढ़ाने पर भी सहमति बनाई। आतंकवाद से लड़ना और आतंकवादियों को सुरक्षित पनाहगाहों को समाप्त करना हमारी सहभागिता का एक महत्वपूर्ण भाग होगा। हम आतंकवादी संगठनों से जुड़ी हुई समान चिंताओं के संबंध में इंटेलिजेंस और सूचना के आदान प्रदान को बढ़ाएंगे तथा पॉलिसी कोऑर्डिनेशन को यथासंभव गहरा करेंगे। हमारे बीच क्षेत्रीय मामलों पर भी विस्तार से चर्चा हुई। अफगानिस्तान में आतंकवाद के कारण बढ़ती हुई अस्थिरता हमारी समान चिंता का विषय है। भारत और अमेरिका दोनों ने ही अफगानिस्तान के पुनर्निर्माण और इसकी सुरक्षा में महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई है। हम अफगानिस्तान में शांति तथा स्थिरता के उद्देश्य पूर्ति के लिए यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के क्लोज कंसल्टेशन, कम्युनिकेशन तथा कोऑर्डिनेशन बनाए रखेंगे।
And seeking to establish a close working relationship with India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi claimed that India will fulfill its commitment toward a mutual partnership with America.
अमेरिका द्वारा भारत की डिफेंस कैपेबिलिटीज का सशक्तिकरण की हम सराहना करते हैं। हमने हर प्रकार से अपने बीच मैरीटाइम सिक्योरिटी कोऑपरेशन को भी बढ़ाने पर भी निर्णय किया है। प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप और मैंने दोनों देशों के बीच बायलैटरल डिफेंस टेक्नोलॉजी, ट्रेड तथा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग पार्टनरशिप की सुदृढ़ता दोनों देशों के लिए लाभकारी होगी। हमने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मुद्दों पर अपने सामरिक हितों की भी चर्चा की है। इस संदर्भ में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय इंस्टीट्यूशंस तथा रिजिम्स में भारत की सदस्यता के लिए हम यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स द्वारा लगातार जो समर्थन मिल रहा है उसके आभारी हैं।
All right, I'm now joined by WION's correspondent Archit Seshadri, who is in Washington, D.C. Archit, what more details do we have at this point in time?
Well, after the long wait, both India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well as U.S. President Donald Trump met face-to-face in the White House. First, they shook hands. Then later on, when they issued a joint press statement, they even embraced each other a little bit, giving each other a little hug. So it was nice to see that warm relationship. In fact, we are inside the White House, where not too long ago we heard from both leaders who talked about what they've already spoken about earlier on, the delegation-level talks, the one-on-one meet. President Trump says, India will celebrate its 70th year this year of independence. independence. He also said before he became the president, he talked about, he would have a true friend in the White House that India would, and he is fulfilling those promises. He was excited to meet Prime Minister Modi. He said both are world leaders, especially when it comes to social media. He talked about taxes, the GST bill in India, and drew comparisons between the tax changes that Trump wants here, as well as how India is dealing with the GST. He also talked about exporting jobs in terms of energy, exporting energy, and talked about the importance of working together with India as well to combat terrorism, whether it's ISIS or global terrorism overall. The tone was inspirational. The tone was positive. We also saw First Lady Melania Trump as well as Ivanka Trump. In fact, Trump even said that Prime Minister Modi invited Ivanka Trump there to India for Global Summit later on this fall, and of which Ivanka did accept. So it was really a sense of a warm embracement between India and the United States. All of this part of Narendra Modi's three-nation tour. He heads to the Netherlands next, but certainly the step is in the right direction as India and the United States get off to a good note. Reporting inside the White House, Archit Seshadri, WION.
In other news, in a major vindication for India and a blow for Pakistan, the U.S. State Department on Monday designated Hizbul Mujahideen chief Syed Salahuddin as a global terrorist. In its statement, the State Department said, and I quote, "As a result of the notification, U.S. persons are prohibited from engaging in transactions with Salahuddin, and all of Salahuddin's property and interests in property subject to the jurisdiction of the United States are blocked," unquote. Now, Salahuddin joined the Hizbul Mujahideen group in 1989. Under Salahuddin's tenure as Hizbul chief, the terror organization claimed responsibility for several attacks, including the 2014 explosives attack in Jammu and Kashmir, which injured 17 people. And in September 2016, Salahuddin vowed to block any peaceful resolution to the conflict in the Kashmir Valley, and even threatened to train more suicide bombers and pledged to turn Kashmir into a graveyard for Indian forces. Meanwhile, India has welcomed the Washington's move. MEA spokesperson Gopal Bagle said that the move vindicates India's position that cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan has been behind the disturbances created in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. However, political experts feel that the decision should have been made long ago.
It does vindicate India's longest-standing position that cross-border terrorism has been behind the disturbances created in Kashmir, and since last year, as you know. And in fact, the outfits that Syed Salahuddin leads, they have perpetuated from the territory of Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir cross-border terrorism against India, including in the state of Jammu and Kashmir for a number of years. So in that sense, I think we would welcome this notification, and it underlines also quite strongly the fact that both India and United States face threat of terrorism. They have faced the threat of terrorism in the past, and they are working together to counter this threat, not in one particular sector, one particular area, but globally also, because terrorism knows no boundaries. Terrorism is a global menace.
Hizbul Mujahideen has already, for a long time, been designated a terrorist group by the U.S. This designation says that in the eyes of the U.S., Syed Salahuddin is not merely a terrorist active against India, but with an impact globally. I think this would have had more impact if it had been issued a long, long time ago. For example, back when Syed Salahuddin was leading the effort, the terrorist movement in Kashmir, rather than now when he is a little bit beside the point.
All right, I'm now joined by Puneeth Ahluwalia, an Indian American, joining me via Skype and on the phone from the US. Puneeth is an experienced lobbyist and an international business advisor. Good to have you, Puneeth. What do you make of the two-day visit by Prime Minister Modi to the US now that he has concluded the visit and the talks are finally over and the joint statement is also out?
Well, first thing is I want to congratulate a great job done by Prime Minister Modi and his team. It's a win-win for both countries. I would say President Trump and our First Lady was very gracious and hospitable, and the people in Prime Minister and President Trump's team. And I think this is the beginning of a very strong and long-lasting partnership between both countries.
And specifically talking about the so-called personal chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, Puneet, what did you make of the two leaders' body language, the disposition, and the manner in which they greeted each other when they met for the first time, and from there onwards, the ease with which they communicated as well?
I think they both are world-class leaders. It shows why they are, because they have such a huge fan following. So they're both each able to, I would say, woo each other and respectfully respect each other's what they have achieved and attained from the humble background where Prime Minister Modi has come from, and a successful entrepreneur, and I would say a great leader that has emerged in President Trump, which is really trying to achieve a lot in a very short span of time.
Indeed. And Puneet, as a prominent Indian American, what might be some of the big takeaways for you, personally speaking, from this visit, especially from the talks that took place between the two leaders and the joint statement in particular?
I would say first thing is I'm very proud as an Indian American of my heritage and the country we have come from and the role we Indian Americans are playing in this country. I feel as a business person, as an international business consultant, I feel it's a great opportunity, because if India takes those proactive actions in removing the barriers, I think the trade between both countries will not only double but triple. And at the same time, the United States is looking for a strong partner to curb terrorism, and that's what President Trump's goal has been when he went to Saudi Arabia. And now he has reached out to India to play a dominant role in the Indo-Asia Pacific region.
Right. And also, were you disappointed that the issue of the H-1B visa did not figure as much as one would have expected in the discussions?
Well, I think it is in the back of mind for both countries and both leaders, because it's a huge amount of FDI. And I guess the onus remains on the Indian companies doing business in the United States, and also the Indian associations doing business in the U.S. How do you win President Trump, who has been a great proponent of creating U.S. jobs, that you share the value of the H-1Bs or the intellectual brain transfer that comes from India or other countries? So they have to come up with a very robust picture, and most importantly, become part of the economic agenda of President Trump. When they make $70 billion in this country, okay, besides paying the taxes, they can justify that. You have to contribute to the rural areas of the blue-collar workers that feel that their jobs have been gone overseas. So you have to do things that will help to bring skilled laborers, bring jobs, and create jobs in key areas, which will help President Trump win his electorate and also the American people.
Indeed. Also, besides their personal chemistry, the body language, the disposition, one other thing which stood out was that while Prime Minister Modi indulged himself in rhetorical flourishes, President Trump was very direct and matter-of-fact, especially before the delegation-level talks when they made very opening remarks to the media. And President Trump, got to the point straight away. He said he was thankful for India to be buying American military equipment. And he also went on to say in his joint press statement that India will be buying 100 aircraft, which is one of the largest of its, deals of its kind, and that the U.S. would like to sell natural gas to India. So clearly, commerce and business and trade investments were on his mind. And but some commentators say, this is a transactional relationship and it might not bode for India and the U.S. going forward.
Well, that's a difference of opinion in doing business with the United States and India. We Americans don't sugarcoat it. We are very clear with what we want. And if you want to do this, this is what it's going to be. You may call it transactional, but we are also looking to create jobs and win elections and keep the House in majority to further our conservative Republican principles. It's very clear. It's all about jobs in the end. And India, again, I come from India and very proud of my heritage, but India has a way of going around and being on the bush. We all want to drive at the same point, creating jobs. So the idea is that we're very direct and we're very straightforward, and that sometimes is kind of very uneasy for Indians doing business in the United States to understand. Why are we asking to do this? Oh, should be a natural. Or we are a natural allies. Well, the reason is there's a cost factor to everything, and that's the reason before Prime Minister Trump was coming, President Trump received a letter from the lawmakers concerned about the barriers that exist in India for the U.S. companies to enhance and increase their business and trade. And that's the reason why intellectual property and other issues are still an important thing. But I guess these two leaders can mitigate that and find a solution to move forward.
All right. On that note, Puneet Ahluwalia, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with me on this important subject we are tracking here on WION. That was Puneet Ahluwalia, an experienced lobbyist and international business advisor who was joining us on the phone from the U.S. and taking us through the nitty-gritties of the Modi-Trump talks. All right, moving on. In a political victory for the U.S. President Donald Trump, the Supreme Court of the U.S. on Monday ruled that it will allow a revised version of his travel ban to take effect. Now, in the revised ban, the justices have narrowed the scope of lower court rulings that had completely blocked his travel ban, calling it a violation of the federal immigration law. The Supreme Court said it would hear arguments from President Trump's lawyers in the month of October. It is also ordered to put the March 6 executive order on travel ban into effect immediately. The court also said that it would allow a 120-day ban on all immigrants entering the U.S. to go into effect. The court also stated that the travel ban will go into effect with respect to foreign nationals who lack any bona fide relationship with a person or entity in the U.S., which means that immigrants with no such ties would be barred from entering the U.S. Now, Trump was, as usual, quick to react and call the court's decision a clear victory of the U.S.'s national security. He further said, and I quote, "The decision allows the travel suspension for the 6 terror-prone countries and the refugee suspension to become largely effective," unquote. Now, President Trump earlier last week that the travel ban, which applies to citizens of Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria and Yemen, come into effect 72 hours after being approved by the courts. President Trump first signed the executive order banning the entry of immigrants from 7 major Muslim-majority countries in the month of January, specifically on the 27th of that month. The order has then triggered widespread protests. Several courts termed the ban unconstitutional and put it on hold, following which the president signed a second order in March, specifically on the 6th of March, excluding Iraq from the list of the countries. However, American Civil Liberties Union said the Supreme Court's decision to revive the travel ban is not a victory for Trump. The organization stated that it will closely monitor the whole revival process of the travel ban.
The implication on the ground is actually not as severe, I think, as it might at first appear, because the number of people who will be affected by this narrow version of the ban is much smaller. You know, I think it's a complete mischaracterization to say that this is in some way a victory for the administration.